When I used to be a network manager at a university, we had a server farm. And in that server farm, we had these massive servers from Dell. They had lots of storage, lots of memory, and we would give a job to each of those servers. Maybe we had a Microsoft Windows server, a Linux server, maybe an Oracle Solaris server. One thing we did is we gave a big server to each college in the university. So the College of Computer Science would have a server, the College of Natural Science would have a server, and so on. And you know what we noticed? Most of the resources were going unused. Only a fraction of that server's capacity was being tapped by the users. Meanwhile, we had to buy all those servers. We had to keep the operating system patches updated. We had to provide power and redundant power to those servers. It wasn't cost effective. We had so much capacity that was simply being wasted. That's the beautiful thing about virtual machines. Instead of having all these physical servers, what we could do is virtualize those servers. We could have a virtual server that contains multiple VMs, multiple virtual machines. We could take the Microsoft Windows server and the Linux server and the Oracle Solaris server and put their hard drives on a big physical server. And this physical server would run a virtual instance, a VM, a virtual machine for each of those formerly physical servers. And those virtual servers, they would have a virtual network interface card to get out to the rest of the world, and they would connect into a virtual switch inside of our server. And then that virtual switch could connect out to the physical network interface card of the server, and we could connect out to an Ethernet switch, and that would get us out to the rest of the world. But how is this possible? How can we take something like a Microsoft Windows server running all sorts of applications and virtualize that inside of a big physical server? Well, the way we can do that is run some software on that big physical server that's housing all of those virtual machines. And that software that allows us to install virtual instances of servers, that's called a hypervisor. A hypervisor is able to create a virtual machine. It can start, stop, it can monitor what's happening with our virtual machines. And we need to know about two different types of the hypervisors, types 1 and 2. First of all, type 1 is where we install the hypervisor software like an operating system directly on the underlying hardware of the physical server. This is sometimes called native or bare metal because we're not putting it on top of something like Microsoft Windows. No, we're installing it directly on the machine, just like we were installing Microsoft Windows. Well, here we might insert our DVD of the hypervisor software. And although the exam blueprint doesn't tell us that we need to know about specific hypervisors, let me give you just a couple of examples. A couple of examples of type 1 hypervisors would be Microsoft's Hyper-V, VMware ESXi. But sometimes we have maybe a laptop and we'd like to run a virtual machine on that laptop. Or for some other reason, we want to install a virtual machine on an existing operating system. We can do that with a type 2 hypervisor. This is also known as a hosted hypervisor. For example, we could install VirtualBox on Microsoft Windows, and on top of that VirtualBox hypervisor software, we could then install maybe another instance of Microsoft Windows, or maybe on a Mac, we could install the Parallels hypervisor software that runs on Mac OS. And on top of that, this is what I frequently do is I'll use Parallels on my Mac and install Microsoft Windows on top of that. So if I have an application that just runs on Windows and I'm on my Mac, well, I can just fire up that virtual machine and run it in Microsoft Windows running on top of that Parallels Type 2 hypervisor. And that's a look at how we can use hypervisor software to run virtual machine instances. And in our next video, we want to take a closer look at those virtual machines. They don't have to be just servers. They could be other network appliances. And we'll also go out to a type 1 hypervisor, specifically VMware's ESXi, and I'll show you how to create a virtual machine. So join me in that video next.